Dole and Kemp, Gore and Lieberman, Kerry and Edwards, John McCain and Sarah Palin. Our third story tonight, today's losing losers, how they lost, and what follows their loss now that they have lost. Republican Vice President, embattled Alaska Governor Sarah Palin today was asked whether she helped cost McCain the presidency.
I don't think anybody should give Sarah Palin that much credit that I would trump an economic woeful time in this nation that occurred about 2 months ago, that my presence on the ticket would trump the economic crisis that America found itself in a couple of months ago, and attribute John McCain's loss to me. But now, having said that, if I cost John McCain even one vote, I am sorry about that, because John McCain, I believe, is the American hero. I had believed that it was his time.
Is Palin getting too much credit for McCain's loss? An NBC Wall Street Journal Republican pollster reports that after last night's results, only 18% of Republicans surveyed want Governor Palin as the party's leader. And new details, perhaps, about why. Newsweek reporting that Neiman Marcus gate was worse than we knew, that McCain aides say Palin spent, quote, tens of thousands more than that 150,000 reported, including as much as 40,000 for the first dude's new duds. A Palin aide denied Newsweek's report that Palin had lower-level aides put her purchases on their own credit cards, saying, quote, Governor Palin was not directing staffers to put anything on their personal credit cards, and then astonishingly in the same sentence acknowledging, and anything that staffers put on their credit cards has been reimbursed. A McCain aide called the shopping spree, and this is one for your SIG file, quote, Wasilla hillbillies looting Neiman Marcus from coast to coast. Damn Republican elites. Newsweek reports that McCain barely even spoke with Palin during their campaign, and that campaign strategist Steve Schmidt had to smack Palin down when she asked whether or not she could speak to the nation during last night's concession speech. Lose your own damn presidential election. Let's bring in Democratic strategist Chris Kofinis, formerly communications director for the Edwards campaign. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
And here come the postmortems. This Wall Street Journal timeline was there was the shaky practice debate by Palin, which caused McCain to want to push the reset button on his campaign, hence suspending it putatively, at least, for the economic crisis. The story, their cover story, the spin, the alibi today is it was the financial crisis that did it to John McCain. Is that accurate, or was it how he handled it that was more an impact on the campaign?
I think it was how he handled it. You can't control whether a crisis happens. Now, let's be frank, when an economic crisis of this magnitude happens, especially in this political climate, it was not going to help John McCain. But how they handled it exposed serious flaws in McCain's candidacy, and you kind of have to point to two big things. You know, the first was when he came out, and I think it's one of the statements that people are going to be looking at, you know, as really kind of a defining moment. When he came out and said the economy was fundamentally sound, it was so out of touch. He basically reinforced everything the Obama campaign had been saying for months. And the second thing is when they chose to suspend their campaign and take 24 hours to go from New York to D.C. and basically not lead on the issue, again, it just exposed that this was another political stunt instead of real leadership. And I think when you put those two events together, it just made people wonder, wait a second, does John McCain have the judgment and the crisis management skills to lead this country in a serious time? And I think what you saw on Tuesday night was voters said, no, we think Barack Obama could do a much better job.
And Governor Palin's role in this. Now, this poll from about who the Republicans want to lead them, Romney and Huckabee both finished ahead of her in that poll. If she does not say, you know, leave politics voluntarily or involuntarily in Alaska, she might stick around to be the slowest moving target imaginable for comedians and commentators. It would be like shooting moose from a chopper. What now for Sarah Palin?
Well, you know, no candidate that I can think of has ever risen so fast and fallen so hard. But, you know, Sarah Palin has clearly gotten a taste of the limelight and clearly a taste for Neiman Marcus. I don't expect her to be going away anytime soon. In fact, you know, it's going to be like a bad comedy or a bad horror movie, depending on your perspective. She's going to be back, I would assume, in 2012. What she's probably going to go is back to Alaska, lay low for a while. Then she's going to end up doing the fundraising conservative circuits, if you will, and then, you know, coming out and talking a little bit more substantially and gearing up for a race in 2012. But this is an amazing transformation. She went from an unknown figure to a star to a caricature in about 2 months. And it's amazing that, that she actually thinks she has a future, but, I guess maybe stranger things have happened, but I can't think of it right now.
I may have to donate to her campaign just to keep her in the news. More broadly, after all this, with this defeat, what is the Republican Party right now? I mean, there's no congressman in the Northeast now is from this party. They have the South, some of the West, mostly in low population states. Is this a national party at the moment?
Well, it is at least a name. There's a civil war that's going to brew, if not going to erupt, within the Republican Party between the moderate wings and the more conservative right wings. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. What's fascinating to me is listening to some of these conservative commentators. It's like, did they watch the election on Tuesday in terms of what's happening? There is an ideological and demographic shift happening in this country that is putting Republicans in a deeper hole. The way they talk about issues is not connecting with voters. And the way they talk about their ideology and philosophy is not connecting with voters. They keep talking about Ronald Reagan like he was in office 2 years ago. It was 28 years ago when he got sworn in. So the notion that they can simply just go back to conservative principles, become more conservative, and they're going to resurrect the party. Listen, as a Democrat, I hope they keep following that philosophy because it'll be good for us.
What about McCain himself? I mean, clearly his finest 2 moments in the campaign when he defended Obama in front of the town hall in Minnesota, and last night when he defended Obama again. I mean, does he become actually a maverick now against his own party and work with the president-elect?
Well, I think you saw maybe an inkling of that last night. I thought it was a very gracious speech. And a very, very powerful speech, just emotionally, in terms of, understanding how historically significant it was that we were electing Barack Obama as the first African-American president. But I think what you're going to see from John McCain, he's going to embrace probably more of his maverick tendencies and try to fulfill his legacy and not necessarily be more of a conservative. But that's going to be an interesting story to watch, how those two candidates, or former two candidates, play together.
Chris Kofinis, former communications director of the Edwards campaign. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Keith.